Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So most of you are on mute, which is okay for now. Just letting you know that during the chants, unfortunately, Zoom does really badly with us chanting at the same time, so I tend to only unmute the Kokyo. But please chant with us, even if we can't hear you. Please chant with us. And also, we would like to rotate the Kokyo, so I haven't been great about this. So if you'd like to volunteer to be Kokyo next week, or on Saturdays as well. I think Teresa's this Saturday, but after that, Wednesday or Saturday, if you'd like to volunteer to be Kokyo, please just send me a message or put it in the chat or anything like that. Great. So for those of you who are new to Zoom, if you haven't figured it out, there's a speaker view and there's a gallery view. For most people, it's in the upper right corner. However, on iPhones, you tend to just swipe. And so it might be nice to watch in speaker view during the speaker and then change to gallery view for the discussion and Q&A. Okay, so today we have as our guest speaker, Brenda. Brenda has been practicing for over 30 years. I don't know how long it's actually been. She's been here a long time. She's a really amazing leader here at Kannon. And today she's going to be talking to us about the Bodhisattva Vow. So welcome, Brenda.
Hello, thank you. So I brought my own coffee, so I might have a sip. So this is a little bit of a personal talk rather than sort of being theoretical. I guess you could sort of call it a way-seeking mind talk of my personal relationship with the Bodhisattva Vow. So you'll get to know me a little more. We recite the Bodhisattva Vow every Wednesday night after lecture, and we'll be reciting it again tonight. For those who are familiar with it, the simplified version is: sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha's way is unsurpassed. I vow to realize it. Now, my own relationship with this vow started many years ago, actually, as Bonnie mentioned. Back in 1982, in a bookstore in my undergraduate school, I was taking a comparative religions class, and I went looking for some of the recommended readings. And I picked up a book on Buddhism, and I flipped through it, and I came to the Bodhisattva Vow. And then I stopped. Somehow I stopped. Something important seemed there, and I sat down and I recited it 3 times. And then I was like, okay, now what do? I put the book back and I went to get dinner. So, I had problem sets and assignments to do, and things were complicated. A few years later, I was in a city called Xi'an doing a junior year abroad. And this was the end of the Silk Road, if people know about it. And there are many Buddhist temples in China. A lot of them were destroyed. And you would ride your bicycle around and find many destroyed temples in the countryside, Zen temples. And I tracked some of them down to some ancient masters. And as part of that, I went to, also traveling all around China, we went to some Tibetan temples in Lanzhou. And I was really struck by how happy the Tibetan people appeared, given their hard life at the hand of the government. In spite of their severe suffering, they just seemed deeply happy. And I really wanted to go to Tibet, to go to Lhasa, but it wasn't allowed at that time for foreigners. So after, realizing that it would be quite dangerous trip, I sort of had given up and then went back to Lanzhou. And as it happened, there were some Hong Kong travelers who I ended up rooming with, and they were heading to Lhasa. So they bought me an extra ticket because they had some passes, and we managed to figure out a way to get me to Lhasa. And when I was in Lhasa, somebody over there taught us about something called Tonglen, which is about the practice of exchanging self for others. which is one of the essential teachings there. And they talk about breathing in suffering and breathing out love. They didn't talk about how to do it, but they certainly seemed like they knew how to do it. That was what I remember from that time. They seemed to have something there, and I wasn't sure quite how to avail myself of that. Later, I returned to the US and completed my studies, and I participated in a Tibetan Buddhist retreat with Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. During the retreat, it was like a 5 or 7 day retreat, something like that. It was a relatively long retreat for me at that time. And I remember, I thought I was doing pretty well at that point. I was meditating regularly. I was like, I was kind of hanging in there. And I was surprised when I met with the Lama about, you get a chance to ask questions a few days into the retreat. And the question that I asked him was really strange. It was, what about the terror? I wasn't aware that I was experiencing terror, but there it was. And I think some of it was, being an immigrant, being alone in a big country, not knowing what was going to happen to me, what I would do with my life. Lots of unanswered questions. His answer was pretty simple. He said, just follow it to its root, and you will see that it dissolves. Okay, I'll try that. So I did. And it got a lot better. I became very peaceful. So I thought, okay, well, this is sort of interesting. A few years later, in 1987, I started graduate school here in California, and I needed a place to practice Buddhist meditation. So I just wanted to sit. And it seemed like the Zen folks knew something about that. So I went to the Yellow Pages and looked up Zen meditation and found Kannon. And I met a fellow named Les K, who's on Zoom right now. And he introduced himself, looked at me and said, I think we will work together. I said to myself, okay, and went my way. But I kept coming back to the temple and began to sit regularly. Later in 1990, I asked him if he would ordain me, and he said, okay. And I started sewing, but then the universe had some other plans for me. I met my current husband, Chris Dragos is his name. We had a little baby and moved to New York for 3 years. I used to think of my dear cushion at Kannon and wonder if I would ever see it again. As luck would have it, a few years later, we moved back to Palo Alto, and there was my cushion waiting for me. Busy years ensued with more medical training and practice, 2 kids, husband and household. During this time, I would wonder about the Bodhisattva vow. And I always figured if I just worked a little harder, practiced a little harder, gave it a little more, got a little wiser, that somehow it would all come together. I received ordination about 20 years later, after initially starting on the path. The children grew and left. Medical practice grew more difficult and alienating. The electronic medical records, lots of paperwork, and very little time. It was a difficult time. And in retrospect, it was a time of deep burnout. I began to look at my friend the Bodhisattva vow with new eyes. How in the world could it be possible to save all sentient beings anyway? What did that even mean? No one can even save one being. Truly. Was it just a ruse? Don't people have a responsibility to take care of themselves? Am I just being codependent? By helping them out all the time, by doing stuff for them? What's going on here? What was happening here? So somehow I couldn't believe that it was just a ruse. So I started trying to think about it differently. I thought maybe there's something I'm missing here. Desires, okay, they're clearly inexhaustible. So what does it mean to end them? They're never going to end. How is that even possible? Okay, Dharma gates, all right, pass through a bunch of Dharma gates leading to beautiful insights. There are always more and more coming up. The view from every mountaintop seemed to change. I had to agree with that. They certainly seemed endless. Buddha's way. Okay, now we're kind of getting somewhere. Buddha's way. What is Buddha's way? You know, letting go. Really letting go. So then what do I do about the Bodhisattva vow? I said, what about that? So I carried this in limbo for quite some time because it was very hard to let go. All around me, I saw many signs of burnout, both in the working world and even in the Zen world. It seemed that even there, people were not immune. They were helping and they were getting burned out. What was missing? What was missing here? I started learning about integrative medicine, taking care of the body, the mind, and the soul, taking care of nutrition, exercise, lifestyle factors, looking at taking care of one's own health. That definitely did help some. Still, there was a deep place of hurt, of cumulative hurt, really a feeling of deep pain at the suffering of the universe. How could it all ever be saved? It was hopeless. I did enter into a kind of crisis of faith, really, at that point. Externally, all was well. But for some of you, for those of you who really knew me, you know, something was off. It was clear. I had hit a wall and didn't know how to go beyond it. And that went on for some time. Then it struck me that there's another few words in that short declaration that maybe I wasn't considering. And they were the words, I vow. Vow, okay. It was sort of a strong intention. Fine. I'll buy that. What about the I? So maybe the real problem was that the I that I was experiencing wasn't helping me. And I could buy that, and I didn't really know how to change it. It's very hard to look at oneself. So I kept sitting, this time really just giving up all goals and all intention. Gone was the Bodhisattva vow. Gone was everything, really everything. Just a cushion, just a body, just sitting. It felt good. No pretensions, no expectations. Wonderful. Be really with whatever came up. Really okay. Annoyance, impatience, fatigue. Okay. I started remembering the words of my Lama friend many years ago. Go to the center of the experience. You will find peace. So I started to do that, sitting right in the middle of whatever was happening. And strangely enough, I started finding it was quite still there. If I stopped having some expectations of being one way or another, there seemed to be more patience, understanding, and willingness to help. Sometimes I'm sure I was quite annoying, for sure, as I often overstepped social conventions, even Zen ones at times. But I felt I needed to figure out what was true for me. And a funny thing happened. It seemed like the bottom sort of started to fall out, like the foundation of everything I perceived to be true really kind of changed into the feeling that there really was no substance. I wasn't the child, I wasn't an adult, I wasn't a mother, a wife, a doctor, a monk. Just a bag of thoughts, emotions, habits, and connections. Subroutines, some new, some old, some outdated, some current, that would occasionally happen. They would come around, and I saw that those around me seemed pretty much the same way. It was kind of a strange moment of seeing the emperor with no clothes, just a big game, a little chaotic, perplexing, paradoxical even. The only thing holding us all together, was a commitment to each other through the process, a vow. And gradually I started feeling less exhausted and less burned out, less like I was helping anyone, and more it felt like there was a complex dance between us all, helping ourselves, helping each other, all at the same time. There was no difference. My husband likes to tell a story about a trapeze artist's son asking the father, "Father, I want to learn to be an excellent trapeze artist, just like you, and to be able to catch you whenever you go flying through the air and never drop you." The father replies, "Son, if that's what you want, don't focus on catching me, but on being where you need to be when you need to be there. In that way, you will catch me at the right time." I would like to end with a little poem. Call it the coronavirus approach to the Bodhisattva path. So we put on our masks and isolate, hiding in our respective homes. Yet on our new best friend, Zoom, we daily engage in friendly banter, saying and feeling things not seen or said for years. People expressing love and belonging. And one day making new friends in Israel and Australia. Which is the isolation and which is the connection? We cannot touch each other, but with a song across the courtyard and a kind word in the parking lot, we touch each other with a smile, a nod, a gentle step aside to allow the other to pass first. There can be no doubt now. We are in this together, connected and one. Vulnerable and hurting, with all of the collective pain and suffering. Stronger than ever is our resolve. Is it not clear then how this works? Suffering turned inside out is love. And this turning inside out is at the heart of what we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. So we're going to now take some question and answers. If you want to switch to gallery view, this is a good time. I'm just going to go ahead and unmute everyone. You can always mute yourself again if you're in a noisy area. Okay, so I guess if you want to ask a question, you can just come to Gasho, or if you don't have your video on, there's a like raise hand button on your screen. So Nicholas. Yeah.
Brenda, thank you for the wonderful Dharma talk. I've always kind of felt like the Tibetan Buddhists are the really colorful, wild cousins of, of the Soto, Renzai, Jogye, Zen schools. We tend to be the more black and white and gray Zen practitioners. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe elaborating a little bit more about your experience in practicing and training with the Tibetan school, and maybe how that's kind of informed your practice today.
I haven't trained a long time with the Tibetan school, although the Tibetans seem to keep coming to me. The experiences I haven't pursued the Tibetan training per se beyond that retreat. Although I seem to have many friends who are Tibetan practitioners, so they send me stuff. But one of the things that I'm actually, and I would recommend that people look at, it has been analyzed from the point of view from the Zen practitioners, are they're called the 59 slogans of Lojong, L-O-J-O-N-G. You can find them on Wikipedia, and they're really wonderful. There's some advice. They're little pithy sayings that really help with kind of not taking oneself too seriously, I think. So let me see if I have, so I think I was gonna So there's a few. Here's the last. There's 59 of them, and I'll read you the last 4, which kind of give you an idea of kind of how it goes. Don't wallow in self-pity. Don't be jealous. Don't be frivolous, and don't expect applause. But they're wonderful, you know, and I think there's long commentaries on them of how to, you know, the Tibetans are really the Buddhist psychologists, and so they really help us to, when we get stuck. I think that's kind of what it's helped me with. When I get really stuck, I take a look at what the Tibetans say, and they usually have something that helps out. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Brenda.
Sure. And I would love to hear people's experiences with the Bodhisattva vow. How do people, what is your experience with it? How does it work for you in your life? I would love, Lee?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brenda, for sharing this, you know, this personal journey. It's very, you know, it's, I feel, you know, a sense of knowing you even better, you know, although I've known you for several years now, and I appreciate hearing about your journey. And it's that Tonglen, when I first became interested in Buddhism, it was, I was going through a very difficult time, and that practice of Tonglen just resonated with me and helped me a great deal to get through just, you know, deep sorrow and confusion and so forth. And so that Bodhisattva vow is always, you know, kind of nagging at me too when I speak those vows, because I think to myself, if I could keep that sense of, you know, sending out love to the world at all times, I would do a lot better, you know, at whatever I'm doing. It was a very important core and a big turning point. And yet still, like you, the confusion that exists when you are speaking those words, it persists, you know, and you do have to sit with it and just allow it, you know, whatever it is, speaking those words, you just have to have a kind of confidence. I'm just going to make that vow and let it be what it is. So this really, your talk really resonated with me very deeply. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah. Don't worry about how it turns out. Yeah, that's not your job.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to share their feeling about or anything else, Bodhisattva vow or anything else?
I have a question, Brenda.
Yes.
At the very start of your talk, you mentioned you met with Tibetan Lama.
Yes.
And he said, get to the root.
Yes.
Did you ever get to the root?
We are one.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about that some more, but not right here.
May.
Brenda, wow, thank you for sharing. I didn't know all of this. And then you mentioned that you were at some point that you have this crisis of faith. So you hit a wall. how does it happen? How did you turn around?
How do you turn the wall around? You don't.
Well, how did you get out from that crisis?
You sit with it. You just you look at it. You look at it. You just you know, Les likes to say, you know, when you run into a problem, put it on your shoulder, you know, make friends with it, become buddies, good buddies. You acknowledge it. You have to face it, because it's you can't run from it. It's very real. It's the way that you're looking at things, the way that you're feeling about things, the way that your whole mind is structured around issues has created that wall. So it's not a wall, right? It's a wall of perception, right? It's a wall of, so the first thing you do is acknowledge it. Boom, that hurts. I just hit my nose, you know, there's something happening here. And then you soften into it. First, after you acknowledge it, you sit with it and you say, okay, well, what's it look like? What's the paint like on the wall? You know, is it white? It's kind of interesting. It's a little, you know, rough. And then you start to appreciate different things about it. And then slowly, you find ways, either up, over, under, through it. It starts to, when you sit with it, you begin to see how your perceptions and your assumptions about life are creating that wall. You know, you just have to be open to it, to new information. I think that's the main thing, is sit with it, acknowledge it, that there's an issue, and allow new information to gradually come in, and keep sitting, you know, and talk to your friends. Because you know, we all have different points of view. I can help each other.
Thank you.
Teresa?
Hi, Brenda. Thank you for your talk. I was a few minutes late, but I really enjoyed the poem you wrote. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I've been thinking about that, because we always say Buddhism is transmitted warm hand towards warm hand, and this has really changed things, right?
Right.
So Buddhism right now is not transmitted from warm hand to warm hand, but it's obvious that we're still very connected. I don't know if I have a question, but I've been thinking about this. I mean, obviously this is not gonna take forever, this situation we're in. So how is it Buddhism transmitted right now?
Through Zoom. You know, I think warm hand to warm hand means mind to mind, soul to soul, right? It means it's not in a book. It's not in a set of rules, a set of follow this instructions and you will make, you know, a Buddhist. That it's you know, there's individual, we help each other and we love each other, and that's how that's created, through a resonance basically with one another, of teacher and student, and student, fellow students, you know, and that's how it goes on.
Umar?
So Brenda, I came to a realization that what you're saying is very similar to what I had read many years ago from Alan Watts. He said, show up do your work and don't show off and leave. So that's what it comes down to. But also, one of the things that has come to me recently with not working and just studying and taking care of what needs to be done is this whole idea that the difference between fault and responsibility, that everything is not our fault, but it is our responsibility. Fault is in the past and responsibility is the present. So what we do right now is we take care of things, and what it is whatever it is in front of us, we face in this given moment. So when you were talking about, the Bodhisattva way, what we can do is do what we can in this given moment, take care of what is important and what really is beneficial and constructive, and let go of everything else. And that's what kept on coming into my mind when you were talking.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Umar, is that we cannot control the things that happen to us. We can't control pandemics. We can't control how people treat us. What we can control is how we respond. What is in our control is our actions, right? Our view, and that's the only thing really ever under our control.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think has a question.
Yes. Hi, Brenda. This is thank you for your talk. I found it very helpful learning about the different flavors of mindfulness practice, which I want to explore more, whether that's Tibetan Zen practice or others. And also the reminder to follow it to its root, and then it will dissolve. So I don't have a question on your talk specifically, but you mentioned that you're a doctor as well. And I recently here at home injured my neck a bit. So if I could get your thoughts on it, maybe after the talk, if you're willing, that'd be helpful.
Sure, I'll stay on until, sure.
It's been very helpful having a doctor in
comes in handy.
Good time to have a doctor in the Sangha. Yep. Okay, anyone else? Mary Christine?
Thank you for sharing how you got back to your center in the midst of your crisis and uncertainties. I think that was beautiful. I also was struck by something you said in your poem. And did you come up with this? Suffering turned inside out is love?
I did.
I think I understand, but can you tell me what you, how that resonates for you?
How that resonates. Well, even with this Corona thing, right? You look on TV, right? And you see, people dying, the Prime Minister of England, in the ICU. I was talking to somebody in New York who just came back from New York a few weeks ago, and all of her relatives have COVID, every one of them. I mean, and one of them is working in the ER, another one in the ICU, and they're still working. It's like crazy. I don't understand. But so much suffering, and suffering, you can't escape it, right? You just can't escape it. Things happen that you don't want to happen. And if you really accept that, maybe it kind of boils down to what Umar was saying about responsibility, is that when you take it in and it kind of, you know, it hits that tender part of your heart, of your soul, where you're like, I accept it. And it's not like I want to fix it. It's different than, you know, my traditional doctor thing, which is like, let me go fix it. I can. And it's not like that. That doesn't work. That Bodhisattva vow doesn't work enough. It burns out because you can't ever fix all the pain in the world. But when you allow that pain to really resonate with you and to feel it, really, to feel it at its core and kind of be with it and just accept it, out of that comes this strength that that it just sort of flips you inside out, you know, and you're like, okay, I get it. Things suck and life is suffering, but I can't fix all of it, but there are things that I can do, right? There are things I can love people. I can reach out to somebody. I can, you know, there's always something to do. And it isn't trying to fix things. I think that's the difference. It's a sort of a natural expression of who you are. So look for that. Look for not trying to fix it. Look for being who you are. And then you can be authentic, you know, in your own experience. Because I think that's, you know, that's sort of how I'm thinking about it. Does that make sense? And then you're grounded, you're solid, because you're right on top of who you are.
So holding it, but gently.
Yes, holding it, letting it affect you, feeling it, letting it really affect you, and being okay with that, and really understanding it. And I think that when you try to really let someone come in and you really understand where they're coming from, you naturally reach out. Once you really get it, what it's like to be them, then you will know how to be of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, maybe. Vanessa, you're on mute.
Thank you, Brenda. I got it. Still getting the hang of it.
Me too.
What you were just saying reminded me just of an image that came up, and I wanted to share it, about love and suffering. A couple of years ago, when my cat died suddenly, I remember I was in a lot of pain, and I went to the movie theater to watch this movie, 3 Billboards outside of a town, which name I can't remember. I don't know if you remember this movie. I think of it as 3 Billboards anyway. And Frances McDormand plays this woman who's just lost her child in the film. And I remember that the movie started and the child has died. And she's standing by this window, and there's a little bug like at the bottom of the windowsill that's in trouble, like the bug's struggling, like it's kind of caught, and it's just so sensitive. Like, it's one of the first shots of the movie, and she just goes in, she kind of notices it, and she goes in with her hand, and she just helps it. Like, you can just see she has this moment of kind of looking into the struggle of this little bug, you know, being bereaved herself. And I don't know, I don't think I ever saw such a poignant image of the way that suffering can transform you and generate love towards absolutely everything, you know, can really put you in that place, even when you see the tiniest piece of suffering. I thought it was really powerful image.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. May?
Yeah, it just occurs to me that when you talk about love and suffering, especially right now, I think just 1 month ago, I see all the sufferings in Chinese people, you know, as drastic as today's New York. And I know that actually Chinese people suffer a lot. I mean, but I'm not just saying Chinese people. I think Jews probably also suffer a lot. But is there any point? Yes, it's yeah, just holding it, right? Is there any point that some people just can't hold it anymore? You know, is there any point that sometimes I reminds of me of the queens, you know, the Elizabeth. She goes through so much, right? She goes through the wars, and there's so much she was holding. And then I also see, you know, Princess Williams actually said, you know, because of that, and then she suppressed those suffering deep inside, and they actually caused harm for people surrounding her. So I don't know. That was so much pain. You know, we try to hold it, but what if you cannot hold anymore? You know what I mean? Yes, you want to hold it. You want to hold it suffering, and then is there any point that you just can't take it, or maybe you know, the capacity. So I'm just wondering where that capacity come from. Come from the faith? Come from the vow? Come from where?
Yeah. So when you can't hold it anymore, and none of us can hold it, really. There's no bounds to the suffering, right? Suffering is endless, right? You can't hold it. You can't hold it. So really, what you fall apart. If you don't let go and you don't shut out, you fall apart. That's what happens. And I would say, you know, allow yourself to fall apart. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Anthea?
Hey. Oh, sorry, I stay home all day. I still in sleep slope, so that's why I didn't show up.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, I listened to the Dharma talk. Yeah, I like it, and actually I haven't had a chance to go to temple to listen to the talk before, but I listened to the podcast online. So yeah, so that's why I think it's a good chance to listen to the talk today. Yeah, I know everybody's suffering, but yeah, I agree. Yeah, if we turn inside out, suffer actually is love. Yeah.
Anthea?
Thank you.
Hi.
Anthea?
Yeah, hi, Les.
I can't see you. Can you come in front of your camera?
Because I stay at home all day. I still in the sleepless.
She said she just woke up.
That's why I don't want to show up. Maybe next time. Next time, I'm sure I will. I promise.
It's okay.
Prepare to show up because I stay home all day. I haven't changed my clothes. Yeah. I'm still in sleeping globe. Time. I promise. Okay.
No worries. Yeah, that's kind of one nice thing about quarantine is you can work it from your pajamas and no one really knows.
Thank you for sharing, Anthea.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
This is Travis. Can you hear me?
Hi, Travis. Yeah.
Hi. I'm not on video.
That's okay.
I was just struck by what you said, Brenda, about a groundedness earlier when you were talking about turning suffering inside out. And I was wondering if you had, as you were describing it, it was kind of, it sounded to me like living with spirit, having, your whole self engaged in what you're doing. And maybe that's the way a more theistically minded person would think, or at least the terms they would use, and I know that we've talked recently about having a sense of God, and when I'm alone, and I'm less busy, I feel that more acutely. So my question is, do you see a similarity with this groundedness and living with spirit?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, Travis. I think that's exactly it. It's just a different language, It's just a different way of talking about an experience, but I think it's exactly the same thing. I agree.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
Megan?
Yes, you talked about your spirit and you talked about your job and how you were having problems, like dissatisfaction with that. Have you reached more satisfaction there also?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Thank God. Yes, it's gotten better. It's still complicated, but I'm in a better place, and I think that I'm feeling much better about it.
Through the same process of just sitting with it and exploring it.
Yeah. There was, some of you know about, sort of an example of kind of one of the things that I think how it worked for me was, at one point when they started with the Toyota process improvement of hospitals, many of you have heard me tell these stories, and they started deciding that, the little children were little Toyota cars, and we should speak with them only 5 minutes before the anesthesia, and that was sufficient to talk with the child and the parents. And if it took longer than 5 minutes, we had to fill out a piece of paper of why it took so long, right? And initially I was very frustrated, very angry, very upset over this whole thing. I didn't feel like it was respectful to the parents and the children, and I was very, very upset. And then I realized, I said, you know what, it's the same kind of thing. They can decide what they do to me, but only I can decide how I act, right? And so I said, all right, well, I'm not going to compromise. Like, they can fire me if they fire me for talking to patients, let them fire me. So I said, I'm going to do the right thing. And if they want me to put it on a piece of paper of why it took longer than 5 minutes, I'll do that. So I started, when they had this sheet on the paper on the entrance to the OR, they said, if it took more than 5 minutes, please describe the problem. And I said, patient had to go to bathroom. Mother had questions about surgery. Child had questions about surgery. Child did not want to leave mother. Nurse needed, so I just pretty much did that a few times. People just went away. They stopped bothering me. And pretty soon, it took about a year, a little over a year, but maybe a couple of years before the Toyota people were fired because other people had the same problems, and it all went away. But the world's a funny place. So I think just live according to your values. That was kind of the conclusion I came to. Live your values, and then just, do your best with the system.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
I think I remember, Brenda, when this was happening, and I think you even mentioned that like the people, that process of only spending max 5 minutes caused a whole bunch of problems.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was like they learned pretty soon that the process was actually really problematic. So it was good you followed your gut on that.
Yeah, it took a couple of years, but they did figure it out. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Diane?
Diane?
Thank you, Brenda. I have not been at Kannon on a Wednesday night forever, and it's kind of ironic that I'm here through Zoom. And I'm really grateful for Zoom. I've been connecting with people that I haven't talked to or seen in so long, both through Zoom and other ways, that the suffering kind of caused us to have to connect in a whole different way. So the way you said that suffering turned upside down, the suffering does have a gift in it for us, in that we're reaching out to others and we have this common thing that is drawing us all together. So I'm just grateful to be here among all of you. And thank you for your sharing.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Thank you for being here and for being who you are. Thank you, everybody. Okay.
So thank you for sharing with us, Brenda. It was a great talk. One thought that occurs to me is that it's one thing to feel someone's warm hand when they're right there with you and you feel their hand, and it's another thing to feel their warm hand when the hand is not physically there. And tonight I felt your warm hand. So
thank you. Thank you.
All right, so any announcements? So I have a quick announcement, which is just that the session is being recorded. If you do not want your question recorded or have concerns about, being in a recorded video, please send me a message or email right after this so I can edit it before we post it. We want to respect everyone's privacy. Having said that, your questions are all very valuable, and I'm sure it would be great to keep them in if you don't mind. Our speaker next week will be Travis on Wednesday night. Travis, is there any specific topic or is it a surprise? Maybe it's TBA.
The topic is, how are we doing?
Okay.
It'll be a short talk and then a longer open style sharing with the group.
Okay. Sounds good. So that's for next Wednesday. And then we have the usual Saturday services and practice. We have meditation 5:30, 6:20, and 9:30 a.m. this Saturday, and 5:30 a.m. Monday through Friday. And we also have a Thursday and Monday nights, also 6:30 meditation. So that's the schedule, and that's all I have for announcements.